Steve, let's reflect briefly on the game at the weekend.
Can you be brief?
Well, I think the thing was that people looked back at the trips to Anfield and the Emirates when you got decent results and said that there was hope there. I think it was a performance, wasn't it, as much?
Yeah, I think I've said often enough to you that when you go and play against the big sides, especially away from home, the one thing you're going to have to do is play to your maximum. And unfortunately, if we're being honest, we were nowhere near it. You could put that down to a really good Manchester United team on the day, where it's always difficult. But I think the disappointment for us all was the manner and the performance. We unfortunately made too many mistakes, silly mistakes. And at that level, I said on Saturday, at that level, you do get punished. And rightly so, we were punished, because when you play at our level, you can't make the type of mistakes that we made, unfortunately, on Saturday. And we've got to eradicate that individual error as something that happens, unfortunately, but it doesn't happen in the Premier League very often. That's why they're Premier League players. And we got rightly and truly punished, and it was a difficult afternoon for us.
Tom Huddleston's obviously somebody that's endured a difficult time in the last couple of weeks. So, even so, to see his name not in the start centre surprised many. How difficult was that for you?
Yeah, well, I was mindful of the fact that we have got 3 games in a week, and Tom Huddleston set really, really high standards here, and I just fight at the moment, like when you do lose a bit of form, that you start fighting it. And we thought that we'd take him out and just let him have a look at it, give him a break from it, and hopefully it'll do him the world of good, because we all know of what ability he's got. He's had a wonderful 18 months with us. Hasn't gone so well over the last couple of weeks. However, I can say that about a few of them. So Tom was unfortunate to be left out, but he took it exactly the way I thought he would take it. He certainly didn't go in a huff, or he got on with it, and he's put himself in contention again because of the way we played on Saturday. It puts himself in contention for tomorrow night.
Should we expect him to return to the starting lineup tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Michael Dawson last week, when asked if he thought that Hull were in a relegation scrap, said, well, Hal, we're not halfway through the season yet, let's just hold the brakes on. Are you?
Well, I think the bottom half of the division is. There's 4 points separate 10, 11 clubs. So when it's like that and you're in amongst it, then we're all in it. And that was the case last year. We were always ahead of the game last year. This year we're not. We knew we had a difficult start, especially away from home with the fixtures that we've had. So we've got to make sure that we try and accumulate the number of points that you need. And I've always said, I said last year, you need 10 wins. At the moment, going into December, we've only got 2. So we've got a bit of catching up to do. And but I still believe that we've got more quality in the squad than we had last year. I still believe that we'll finish higher up in the league than we did last year. However, the Premier League, the Barclays Premier League, is demanding, tough, unforgiving. And when you're not hitting the heights that you know you're capable of, then unfortunately you get punished. And it's our turn, so we have to roll up our sleeves a bit, find a bit of form from somewhere, and still have the belief that we'll have a decent season.
Everton away then tomorrow night. What would it do for everybody around here?
Well, if we can go and get a result, it would be terrific, and we know we're capable. It was only 4 or 5 weeks ago that we went to Liverpool and Arsenal, so we know we're capable. But the one thing we're going to have to do is go and play well, and go and find a bit of form, and stop the silly mistakes, which unfortunately was littered in Saturday's performance. So I'm still very, very optimistic that we can. I'm still convinced that we can still have a decent season. It's been a really difficult spell, we know that. We're under no illusion to that. But then again, if we're still 3-4 points between all 10 clubs, then we're all the same. This is what it is at this stage of the season, and we'd like to have more points, but it wasn't to be.
Clearly there isn't any easy games in the Premier League, but given the run that you've been on in the last month, is there light at the end of the tunnel possibly?
Well, after tomorrow, I think that we've played 8 games out of the 13, 14 away from home, to the vast majority of the top end of the division. So we always knew last year, you know, it was the teams in and around us that we beat, which are crucial. And that's why we're so disappointed against Burnley 2-3 weeks ago, because they're in and around us. Or we expect them to be in the bottom half of the division, no disrespect to Burnley. So I think that's vitally important to a club like ours and the bottom half of the Premier League. It's always the results against the people in and around you which ultimately count.
And I know when we spoke on Friday, Abel Hernandez was out of the country. Any chance that he's back tomorrow night?
No, I mean he's back in the country, but it takes so long with flights and all what have you. Then I think it would be unfair to throw him back in. So he'll miss tomorrow night.
Thanks.
Can I just ask you about the performance, because you're clearly disappointed after Man U. You were clearly disappointed by Burnley. You sort of had a half a game against Tottenham you were pleased with. Can the real Hull City please stand up?
Well, you're right in what you say against Tottenham, and unfortunately we went down to 10 men. It's hard enough with 11, let alone 10, and that's happened to us 3 times this season. You know, we've been down to 10 men in one way or another. So you're right, we've got to find that bit of consistency. But the real, you know, we've gone to Old Trafford. Let's not forget that, against a very, very good Man United who are just starting. So anybody, and if you don't play really particularly well, can have a difficult time there. You're right, the performance against Burnley was not acceptable. However, you know, you can say that about 10, 12 teams. You know, we're 3-4 points separating us all. So we're all in the same boat, if you like. We've got to try and find a bit of form. We've got to try and get our big players performing the way we know we're capable of. And it was only a week ago that we played Tottenham, a really good Tottenham team. And in the first half in particular, before we went down to 10 men, played very, very well. So that's what this Premier League is. You know, we're under no illusion. It's the second season in. We always knew it was going to be difficult. And I'm still convinced that, you know, we've got a big enough and better squad than we did last year. But you're right, we have to find a bit of form and really start putting in a few performances at this particular part of the season.
It's just said there that you've got to get your big players playing a game. How do you do that? How do you go about it?
Well, you know, confidence is a big thing in football. You know, if you could bottle it, then it would be worth a fortune. You've got to have a belief in them, which I have. I think a few of them will say they haven't performed to the levels they would expect. Sometimes that happens. That's what being a Premier League footballer is, and it's how you get through it. You know, it happens to great players. You know, it was only 5-6 days ago Van Persie was saying they were going to leave him out the team. Scores a wonder goal at the weekend. That'll do him the world of good. You've got to come through it, and hopefully come through it quick. And sometimes you might have to take a break from it, to have a breather from it, and take a step back, because nobody wants to go in front of 75,000 and play badly. You know, everybody wants to play on the big stage. Sometimes it happens, but you've got to have, you know, you've got to be determined enough to see it through.
I don't know if you saw the Tottenham game with Everton on Sunday. I thought quite an interesting game in many ways, but I got the sense that Everton ran out of a bit of steam towards the end.
Well,
They were on there.
I think
They've been in Europe, haven't they?
well, they've been. I always think it's very, very difficult. Both teams had been in Europe, and we know how difficult that is. But it was a very, very good game. I thought Tottenham Everton started really well. It was a typical Premier League game with a lot of quality. Make no mistake, Everton are a very, very good side. They've got really top players, and it wouldn't be surprised if they're going to be in the top 6, 7 again. I would estimate. I would have money that they're in the top 8. You know, Everton, and could be in the top 6, because I just think they're a very, very good team. So we're going to have to be at our best. We're going to have to, you know, start playing the way we know we can. And if we do that and we play well and we're not good enough on the night, then sometimes you have to accept that, you know. So, but it's all about performance levels, and if we get it right, we'll be okay.
How many changes do you think you'll make? How many changes are you minded to make? You hinted at Tom there. What else?
Well, I've got a team in my mind which will go on the training ground this morning, so I think it would be unfair if I told you before I even tell them. So I've got a team in my mind that will play tomorrow night against Everton, and let's hope we can go and perform.
Steve, do you think the fact chance that the season ended late last year with the FA Cup and it started?
No, I don't think there's any real. I don't really look at last year. I mean, I know people saying in 2014, you know, we in the league anyway, but you know, it doesn't say in them stats that we won 5 or 6 cup games. You know, it doesn't say them stats. So I think it's unfair and unwise to really think about last season. It's what we've done this season, and it's fair to say in 2-3 games in particular, we have come nowhere near the level which I would expect. However, we've played some really, really decent football too. And it was only, as I said, a week ago that 11v11 against Spurs, a very, very good team, that I was absolutely delighted with the performance. With 10 men it was difficult, but there's no mistake that we've got to, you know, find a bit of form. We've got some big games coming up. It's a crucial part. For me, December, January defines your season. If we can put back-to-back wins together, we'll go in the top 10. That's how tight it is. So we're still all to play for, long way to go. And in my own mind, I still haven't had the team where I think is my best team available and fit or ready to go yet, which is not making excuses, but that's fact. So I hope very, very soon that I can put the team that I think on the pitch.
You don't think starting early with Europe this year had an adverse effect on performances like Tom or Curtis?
Well, make no mistake, it was difficult. It was difficult, but I don't really look for excuses. I don't really want to try and make excuses. If we're going to be honest, there's 2-3 performances this year in particular where we haven't played well enough. I have to say though, in large, the vast majority of the games, apart from the weekend, there's been 1 goal in it. Somebody said to me the other day, if the games had been 82nd minute, 82 minutes the game's long, then we would have been 5th top. We've had a difficult, you know, start to the season in one way and another. 10 men, we've been down to 10 men 3 times, you know, with over half an hour to play, and we've conceded 5 times in the last 5 minutes. Now that usually happens to you once or twice. It doesn't usually happen 5 or 6 times in 10, 11, 12 games. So it's been difficult and a difficult start, but I'm still convinced that we'll be okay.